which is surprisingly little, and it's about 500 words per A4 page, so 4,000 is 8 pages plus illustrations, and however rich you want to make it. Don't start with the general and move towards the specific. I would suggest starting with the specific or something small that you can then expand out and use that to stand in for a larger concern. So rather than talk about, I don't know, say, Ramsey, decay in general, really get into what decay means in terms of your research, for instance, and then how does that apply to timbers and structure and time, and also Rampton bridges in general is how are you thinking about a bridge as someone who's built 3 bridges or 3 houses that have bridges? And I think something put it in the comments was you are carrying a reader with you, so do structure how you get across. Don't apply all your knowledge on the subject to the page. Keep things in reserve for another project. There's a phrase in there's a beautiful exhibition on the art of editing at Oxford at the minute, and it's well worth looking at their website because they've got beautiful examples of what the job of an editor is. And there's a beautiful phrase that came out of that exhibition that editors use, is when you're writing, you've got to stop at various points and kill your darlings. Oh. And this is to kill the things that you're really crafted and you really love. And do they flow as part of the general argument, or are they superfluous and being clever for clever's sake? And I've just done that with something I wrote a few months ago, and it was a bloodbath. What I thought was really good at the time, it just looked like the Gettysburg battlefield after you'd finished. They weren't appropriate there. You can put them aside and use them again later. But there's a constant process of editing. Is this helping someone along with my argument? Is it helping my argument in general? Does it flow?
I think I would add something specific, which it isn't a story of your time. I think that's very easy, and I've seen a lot of people write the story of a project, but it's not that. It's a documentation of like the outcome, or your view of it, or whatever. It would be slightly different between MSc and MArch in that respect, perhaps. But I guess in MArch it maybe could be a story. In the case of like documenting a scientific output, it's still really easy to accidentally fall into the trap of writing like a chronology of I tried this and then I tried that and that didn't work and over here this was a thing. Instead, it's more about, you're right, picking, if your research question is quite specific, everything should be thrown away that doesn't contribute to that specificity, unless it backs up things that like were lessons learned on the way, you know. And so you can throw away 50% of the studies if a few of them give the story. So it's not like the fabrication log. Any form of dissertation or thesis is in itself a summary.
Yeah.
I think journalists use "kill your babies" a bit more visceral than "kill your darlings," maybe.
Yeah, I think "kill your darlings" might be more acceptable.
Yeah.
This is what Scrivener looks like. That's something I'm writing with on the tube at the minute. These are various chapters. Yellow means I've got to attend to it. Blue is I'm working on it. Grey is titles and things. But in the body of the text, I find it useful to, if you're working on one paragraph, to just use tab return and isolate things so you work on smaller amounts. Red means I've got to attend to that immediately. It's just not working, but there's maybe some notes in there. Blue, which is up there, means it's something I've made a note of, someone else's words, but I've got to find the attribution and I've got to find a way to put it in. Because personally, I find it easier to write and then fit the quotes in afterwards that support what I'm trying to get to. And also, inevitably, you'll do more research on the way that is pertinent to that point. And do keep a tab on in each section you're writing, whether it's a paragraph or a chapter. Where are you trying to get to? Where does this have to get to so it doesn't totally meander? And 4,000 words it's a really nice length. It means you have to be quite concise and you have to take your reader somewhere efficiently, which is a really exciting discipline.
I like that, the way you write in blue, where you need to attribute. I find myself writing, when I'm writing anything like that, and I can remember the projects, but I don't know how to attribute it. I'd be more likely to be like, oh, and in reference to brackets, that project at Hooke that Emmanuel told me about, the name I forgot, close bracket, highlight in red, and then continue what my thought process is going, like try and give myself enough of a reference that I won't forget what I meant. But in what was in my head at the time, I just splurged that there. But you're right, highlight it, placeholder it, and go. I need to solve that later.
To get it on the page.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just disappears. Someone, a really good researcher told me when he's doing the final edits, everything is in red, which means that I need to attend to this. On your second pass, when you've kind of dealt with some of the red, you turn sections blue. And then your third pass, green, and obviously you're ditching a load of stuff as well, but you only turn it to black when you're ready to print. So you can just look at the document, you know, I've got to deal with the red because that's unresolved. Blue is partially resolved, green is pretty good, black is ready to go. So it's visual cues as you're writing. If I get stuck on a paragraph, I find just returning it to isolate one sentence at a time, and you break up a paragraph into loads of sentences. It's much easier just to deal with that. That's not working, get rid of it. This is kind of working. Don't leave this sentence until you've got it sorted. So I think all of that is trying to get to the point that your dissertation or your thesis or any writing in general, but academic writing is a continual project. And I deeply suggest you find times in your day where you set aside a moment for writing. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, that's 70 minutes a week. That's a lot of time you get. And someone that Peg Ross said once that if you, she found this. She advised students at the Bartlett to do this. Get up 45 minutes early a day. It won't make you that much tireder, but write before breakfast. And even if you write for half an hour before breakfast, give yourself a time for breakfast, say at 7 o'clock, whatever. You stop then, mid-sentence, doesn't matter, you stop then. After breakfast, you look at the writing. Is it useful? If it is, great. You've produced something in the day. If it's not useful, just ditch it, and nothing's happened to your day. You've still got the same amount of hours left to do your project or whatever. But cumulatively over a month, I think you get about 48 extra hours by doing that. You just make your own time, literally. Your job is to make time, invent time. But if you do manage before breakfast to write something nice or get an idea down, that really helps your day. And the other thing that she said, I've never managed to do this, is write in 45-minute chunks and then give yourself a 15-minute break. But I've never made that work because you kind of get caught up in what you're doing. You're excited. But the before breakfast thing is really, I'm doing that at the minute and it's really productive.
I want to also add, I think, and I've never been good, and maybe you would have ideas on how to maintain this, but the idea of the kind of graph or map, or like I use indents, basically just a summary of indents of the thesis, I found to be over the years really powerful because it lets you, as you said, kill the darlings, right? As you refine your research question, you realise that like a precedent that seemed cripplingly important that you've written a whole paragraph about is now no longer important, and you can see that in in a global structure quite easily, because you suddenly a research
That's
question
really nice.
changes, and so that precedent is about something now totally irrelevant. You can find that paragraph and almost wholesale say, probably I don't need this anymore, which works well if you have a map, because you see the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I've never been, I have to say, I'm not brilliant at doing it. I've tried multiple ways, but when I've had it, particularly right at the beginning when I'm framing things, it's useful. And I've tried usually to keep that on a blank page at the beginning of the work. It hasn't always worked for me, but it is such an easy overview rather than trying to look at a whole page and you see all the writing and all the paragraphs, which could be 4 bullet points in a kind of overview. It's hard to do, but I think it's helpful if you can manage it.
That is super important, because if you all of us spend time on these things. If that paragraph is no longer useful in the essay at this stage, the essay is very much a live project. Move it into an appendix. Huge fan of appendices showing strands of research that kind of didn't lead anywhere, but I needed to do them to get to where I've got to. It also allows the reader, especially in an academic setting, to see what you've tried and the variety of routes. And you can also, probably more pertinent to the thesis and dissertation, use side notes, so you can have parallel arguments. You can use recto verso, left page and right page. You can do different things. You can have footnotes, endnotes. Nice thing about side notes is you don't have to leave where you're reading and go and find some reference.
It's pretty much lunchtime.
Yeah.
There's only 2